This Let's Edit with Media Composer tutorial is brought to you by VideoGuys.com, the leading reseller of video editing and production equipment for more than 25 years. And by Boris Effects, a leading developer of visual effects, titling, video editing, and workflow tools and plugins for broadcast, post-production, and film professionals. And by Rampant Design Tools, creators of QuickTime-based style effects for video and designed to significantly enhance content for editors, visual effects artists, and motion graphic designers. Hey everyone, Kevin P McAuliffe here, and I am back again with another Let's Edit with Avid Media Composer tutorial, and in this lesson, I'm very excited to show you the new 8.6 update for Avid Media Composer, which includes the new source browser as well as audio ducking features. The source browser is going to change the way that you link to, import, and even view media inside of your projects. And the audio ducking feature is fantastic for all of you editors out there who need to do a quick mix when a client's coming. You can easily use source ducking to do a mix literally in a matter of seconds. Okay, now before we go on, I want to remind you that these tutorials are designed to get in and take a very in-depth look at very specific aspects of editing inside of Avid Media Composer. But sometimes you just need to get the information and get yourself up and running lightning fast. Well, if that's the case, head on over and check out my Mac Pro video training series on Media Composer, where lesson 1 will get you up and running in Media Composer in about an hour. Okay, so let's Command and Tab into Avid Media Composer, obviously Alt and Tab for all my Windows friends out there. And let's get started right away by talking about the source browser. Now, how we're normally accustomed to linking to or importing media into our bins is we'll right-click in the bin and we'll come to the Import command and we'll choose either Link to or Import Media. Now, as of this release, you're going to notice that we have both access to the source browser and to import media. That's just because in case you happen to run into any issues inside the source browser, you also have the option to import your media directly. But in future point updates for Media Composer, the import media feature will be removed and everything will be done from within the source browser. So let's launch the source browser, and here it is right here. Let me just expand the window out a little bit here just so that it's easier to see. Now, the first thing that I want to point out right away is that the source browser is not a window that you need to open and close if you don't want to. Now, in this case, I only have one screen, so screen real estate is very important. But if I happen to be working in a dual screen environment, I could put the source browser over on the right screen, leave it open all the time so that I can quickly have access to media on my hard drive. Now, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in each one of the windows. On the left-hand side, this is where we're going to get in and find our media. You can see that we obviously have a breakdown of the drives on my system. I got the Macintosh hard drive and my media drive. I also have access to favorites and recent folders as well. We'll get to those in just a second. Now, let's just say hypothetically, I wanted to find some media that's located on my media drive in the footage folder. So what we're going to do is simply scroll that down. We're going to come to footage. Now, I can also come in and simply double click on the media folder, double click on footage as well to choose the folder that I want. And let's come down to, I don't want to choose the dancing footage because I just selected that as a favorite. Let's choose some motocross footage here. Now, what's going to happen is once I select it, Media Composer is going to take a second, and what it's going to do, depending on what I have selected down here at the bottom, it's either going to give me a list view, like you see that I have selected right now, which is a standard way of working, especially if you worked with Link to media, or what we can do is see thumbnails for the media. Now again, depending on how many clips you have in the folder, the media browser might take a second or two to load up the clips so that you can see them. And once it's done, you'll see that we have now thumbnails of all of the clips that are inside of this folder. We can easily adjust the size of these thumbnails, again, depending on how many clips we have in this folder, by simply grabbing our slider and dragging it to the left or dragging it to the right. Now in most cases, I like to have the thumbnails as big as possible, because the whole point of the source browser is that it works very similar to the way that you have thumbnails inside of your bin. What we can do is I can actually navigate to the first clip here, and as I drag the mouse over, if I drag the mouse down, I can preview that clip forwards and backwards by simply dragging the mouse over top of the clip. What I can also do is select that clip and simply hit play on the keyboard, and that clip will play right from within the source browser. Now, this is a great way for you to go in and preview any clip that you might want to work with before you either link to or import it. Now, let's talk a little bit about what else is going on inside of the source browser more towards the bottom of the window. We'll start with the more basic stuff and work our way out from there. In the lower right hand corner, whenever we're linking to or importing, we're going to want to choose the bin that we're going to be bringing this footage into. So you'll see in the lower right hand corner we have the option to set the target bin. We can set it to be the clips bin, which I have open, or the Let's Edit with Media Composer bin, or we can even create a new bin right here from within the source browser. Now you'll also notice that by default, link is selected as the option to bring this clip in. That's determined over here on the left by what I have selected, either link or import. What's also very cool is that you have access to the link settings if I click on it right here. And what I also have access to is the import settings if I have that selected. And you'll also notice that depending on which one I have selected, if I have import selected, I'll immediately have access to the resolution and what drive this media is going to. So all that can be done right here from within the source browser. And again, of course, you can have access to the import settings if you need to get in and do things like change your color levels or add alpha channels and things like that. I'm just going to say OK, and I'm going to switch this back to link because we're just going to be linking to this media for right now. Now the other thing that's very cool about the source browser, I'm just going to bring it out of the way here, just south a little bit here, is that we were talking about how we can get in and get a preview by just scrubbing through the clip. But in some cases, you actually want to double click on the clip to see what it's going to, be full screen inside of your editing window. So what you can do is, based on what you have selected down here at the bottom, you'll see that a double click is going to load the clips into the source monitor. We can drop that down, and what we can do is have a double click, link, or import. Now, to be honest, I'd rather just have the link or import button again, depending on which one I select. I'd rather that button is what brings things in. So I'm going to load the clips into the source monitor. So if I double click, boom, there's the clip. Now what's important to keep in mind, it's not imported into the project or linked to into the project yet. It's just being shown to me. Now again, if I had a little bit more screen real estate, I'll just bring the source browser down a little bit here. There we go. We can just double click on any one of these clips to call them up. Now if I was to take this clip and drop it into one of my timelines that I was working on, that clip would be immediately linked to in my project. Now, a couple other things that I want to mention. As I'm going through, I'm double clicking on clips to call them up into the source monitor. If at any time I was going to close the source browser, down here you'll see that if I close the source browser, it's going to clear the source monitor when I do that. What I could also do if I wanted to, but to be honest, I kind of like to have the source browser open all the time when I work on a dual monitor display, I could, once I import or link to a clip, simply have the source browser close. Now, a couple other cool things I want to show you in here is the ability to, again, come in, and if I decided that this bin was a bin that I wanted to use all the time because I had a bunch of media in there, I could simply make it a favorite folder, and once I have it tagged as a favorite folder, I can come up to my favorites and have access, quick access, to those folders with the click of a mouse. And again, as always, I could always come to the recent items and get back to one of these folders very quickly and very easily if I ever needed to track a clip down. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to come back to my favorites here. I'm just going to come to motocross. Let's just select a clip. All I'm going to do is make sure that this is going to link to, and I'm going to put it into the Let's Edit with Media Composer bin. I'm simply going to say link, and again, in a matter of about half a second, that clip is now in my bin, ready to go. So the source browser is a fantastic new feature that I guarantee is going to change the way that you work with getting media into Media Composer. And again, you can leave it open on a second screen so that you have access to it all the time. Okay, so let's move on now and let's talk about audio ducking and how that works. Again, like I said earlier, you're going to use this in situations where you need to just do a very quick audio mix and you want to get in and have keyframes added to your music track or maybe another sound effects track to basically dip it down beneath a voice track or any other track that you happen to have on a different audio layer. Now, obviously to get working with it, we're going to need to be able to find it. Now I have it mapped to the composer window right here, and we can find it actually in one of a few places. You'll want to either map it to your keyboard, to the composer window, or know where it is in the menus. Now in the menus you can find it in the timeline drop down right here, audio ducking. Now it's not activated because I don't have any audio tracks in my current timeline, but if I was to call up the example I'm going to use for audio ducking and I was to come back to timeline, you'll see now that we have access to it right here. Now, inside of the command palette, let's come down to the command palette, you're going to find it in the More tab right over here, audio ducking. And I just have it mapped to the composer window. So to get audio ducking to work, what we're going to do is we're going to hit the command on the composer window. And I'm going to be asked, first of all, where are my dialogue channels? Now you'll see that I have 4 audio tracks to represent the 4 audio tracks in my timeline. And I'm going to choose audio track 1, which is where my voiceover is. And I'm going to choose the music tracks being on 3 and 4. And once I have those selected, you might want to get in and do some advanced options, which you'll see down here we have some dialogue track parameters and music track parameters. Now for the dialogue track parameters, for the threshold value, you're going to want to enter a value to set how aggressive keyframes are going to be applied when analyzing the dialogue tracks. And for that hold time, you're going to want to enter a value in frames to set how long the track is going to stay ducked after the last known peak above the threshold value. And for the music track parameters, we have attenuation and ramp time. What do those mean? Well, attenuation is how low do you want the audio to dip underneath your voice track, and ramp time is how long do you want the dip to actually take. Now in this case, I'm going to leave it as half a second because we are working in a 2398 frame per second project, and minus 10 dB I think is pretty good for what we want to do. Now again, keep in mind the audio ducking will vary based on how many dips you want it to do and how long your timeline is. My timeline is not very complicated, so it's not going to take very long. I'm simply going to hit audio ducking. You'll see that in a matter of seconds, I now have keyframes added in to have my audio dip down below my voice track. I can just come back. Now again, keep in mind this is a scratch VO that I just put in here. But as you can hear, music dips down. This is some very cool motocross footage that we have in our timeline. And then the music comes back up just like that. Very quick and very simple. And that's basically audio ducking in a nutshell. A very cool feature and a great way to get in and to create an audio mix super quick and super simple. Okay, since we're talking about audio with audio ducking, let's talk about another new feature inside of 8.6, and that is the ability to group audio tracks together. How many times have you been in a situation where maybe you've got, 50 audio tracks and you'd like to turn on all 10 of your voiceover tracks, or all 10 of your dialogue tracks, or all 16 of your music tracks, and you find yourself constantly clicking in the timeline, and you'd really rather not do that. You'd rather click one button and turn all your music tracks on, or click one button and turn all your dialogue tracks on. Well, now we have the ability to do that inside of version 8. Inside of the audio mixer, you'll notice that we have an option below tracks called, appropriately enough, groups. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to turn on tracks 1 and 3. And these are going to be my odd groups, only because I only have 4 audio tracks. And that's good enough to show you how this works. So what I'm going to do is inside of the groups feature, I'm going to right click and I'm going to select new group from selected tracks. Now, because again, I have tracks 1 and 3 selected, that's what's going to be added to the group. Now, I could get in and add, as many audio tracks as I want to the group. And this is actually what's very cool. Is if you know that all of your dialogue tracks are going to be on 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, you can actually select that before you even create the group. Before you have anything in your timeline, you can set all that up beforehand. Now again, because I only have 2 audio tracks, I'm just going to leave it as 1 and 3, and I'm going to call this, appropriately enough, odd channels. Okay? And I'm going to say OK. Now you'll notice that as soon as I select OK, the odd channels now appears in the groups. And of course, we're going to do the opposite now. Let's right click and let's say new group from selected tracks. Of course, we're now talking about the even tracks. Okay. And I'm going to say OK. Now at any time, if I want to switch tracks, I can simply just turn on the tracks that I want to have selected, and they will be selected immediately in my timeline. Another cool new feature. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the timeline a little bit. And what I'm going to do is just close the audio mixer here. I'm just going to grab a couple clips and I'm just going to drag them into my timeline. And what I want to show you is that we now have the ability inside of our timeline to quickly move through and select items. Now again, I'm just going to grab stuff very quickly here. Okay, and I'm not going to worry too much about gaps. And we'll do one more here. Okay, there we go. Very nice. Okay. Now what we have the ability to do is I'm going to right click on my video track, and if you come down you'll notice that we have the select option here, and inside of the select option what I can do is I can select everything to the left of where I am, to the right of where I am, clips that have the same source color, clips with no source clip color at all, one of my personal favorites, offline clips. We could choose clips with the same local clip color, or we can even reverse the clips that we have selected. So for example, if I say, let's select the clips to the right, you'll see that it selects everything down the timeline. Because I have a blank space here in my timeline, that's going to be selected as well. And what I could do now is simply right click, come back down to select, and I can say, well, you know what, let's reverse that selection. And there we go. You'll see this is another great and handy way to get inside of your timeline and quickly select clips for you to either move or work with. Now, in this lesson, I can't get in and show you everything that's new in 8.6, but I want to show you one last feature that I think is very cool, and it's one that I use all the time. Now, you might be familiar with the mask margins feature. Now, I actually have it turned on right now inside of my timeline. I'm just going to turn mask margins off here. And what mask margins basically do, you'll notice that if I come to my target mask, right now I'm just going to turn no mask. I'm going to have it turned off. What mask margins do, if I come to the Format tab, you'll see mask margins is right here, is it gives me the ability to mask my timeline to a specific aspect ratio. So let's say, for example, I had a bunch of clips in my timeline that had varying letterboxes. I can come in and set one mask to go down the whole timeline and not apply it as an effect, but Media Composer will go in and basically just mask the image however I tell it to mask it. So you'll see right now I have a mask margin set of 235 to 1. Let's just change that. Let's put this at 1.90 to 1, and I'm just going to say apply, and you'll notice that nothing happens. I'm just going to say okay, because we actually have to turn mask margins on. Now you have the ability to come and right click on the sequence window, come down to target mask, and choose whether you want to mix to white, mix to black, or have the mask as black. I'm just going to choose mask black, and you'll see that mask margin has now appeared at the top and at the bottom. Now you'll see that I also have a shortcut on my Composer window to turn the output mask on and off. Now, this is not a new feature. This feature's been here for a couple versions. But what is new is that in many cases what you'll do is you'll mask, over your timeline to get everything set to go. Then you're like, oh, now I need to go back and apply an effect so that I can export this. Where am I going with this? Well, if I right click here to export, and I'm just going to export this as an AMA file export, what we now have the ability to do inside of both our standard export window and inside of AMA file export is to export with the mask margins. So instead of having to come in and mask this as a separate effect, I can actually turn mask margins on and then export this timeline with those masks enabled. A great additional feature so that we just have one less effect that we have to add to our timeline. Okay, now because I want to keep this tutorial at about 20 minutes, I don't have time to go into all of the new features inside of 8.6. But just to sort of round everything out, I want to just quickly mention that now inside of 8.6 we have support for Panasonic AVC long GOP format. What's also going to happen is that we have the ability to name audio tracks in our timeline, and what's going to happen is when you name that track in your timeline, that name is also going to be reflected up in your audio mixer. We also have the ability now to get in and nest audio suite effects, much like we nest video effects. And this was a great little feature that they snuck in there, which is that in 8.6, any sequences that you create will have pan information associated with every clip that will override the pan information that you have inside of your settings. So basically, if you were to open this timeline that we created in 8.6 on another system, the pan information will default to what is located in the timeline as opposed to what is in your audio settings, so keep that in mind. We also get some improved red plugin performance. Also in 8.6, the SMPTE channel order for your audio, whether it's 5.1 or 7.1, will be selected as the default, but you can get in and switch that to Pro Tools if you want, inside of your audio settings or inside of the audio mixer. And last but certainly not least, I want to point out that 8.6 has been qualified with 10.11.5 of Mac OS X. And one last thing that I absolutely have to mention, although we sort of go blue in the face by saying this on the Avid Editors of Facebook, do not upgrade to 8.6 until your project that you're working on is done. Don't be upgrading on the Friday afternoon with a deadline with a long weekend coming. You know that that's just going to lead to problems. Wait till one project is wrapped before you get in and upgrade to this fantastic new version. Now, as we're wrapping up, I want to remind you that if you're looking for great deals on Avid Media Composer software licenses, subscriptions, and upgrades, use coupon code MC101 for 5% off any purchase at videoguys.com. MC101 is going to be a coupon code that you're going to love because the great team at Boris FX is offering a 10% discount on BCC10 AVX or multi-host licenses, full or upgrades, again using the coupon code MC101. And finally, Rampant Design Tools is offering 25% off any non-discounted product they offer in their library. Again, you guessed it, by using coupon code MC101. And finally, don't forget that if you have any questions, you have any comments, or you have any tutorial requests, you can send them to me at kevinpmcauliffe@gmail.com. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.